So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first in a series of webinars that we are organizing on the topic of the project, on citizen engagement and OSS, but also that we are organizing by our project, which is called PadovaFIT Expanded. It is an EU-funded project, and the topic is also one-stop shops for home renovation. And we are in a time that actually the projects on one-stop shops are really popping up like mushrooms all over Europe. It's been for some years now, because as you already know, the European Commission, but not only the European Commission, but also the national governments and local governments have realized that there is something in this idea that a service such as a one-stop shop, either if it is online or an actual place, whether it is a private as a service or whether it is a public service, but the idea that citizens can actually go somewhere and really get some advice, get some information, and not be lost in this maze of home renovation. So this idea is really a valid one, and this is why there's a lot of projects on the topic. You probably know there's even quite some events as well. So we are also going to do many events this year, so stay tuned if you're interested in the topic. And we're always interested to share with other EU projects on what they've been doing. In our project, PadovaFIT Expanded, what we have is a project that kind of was born in Padova. So there is a one-stop shop that is at the moment being set up in Padova. And what is specific about this one-stop shop is that it is really truly a private-public partnership. And you can go on our website, PadovaFITExpanded.eu, where you will see really all our partners. And what is also specific is that we are going to, the model that has been created and is working well in Padova is going to be exported to Bulgaria and also to Romania, so to some specific cities there. So this is something that's very interesting. And that's why I was saying at the beginning, I'm happy that we can have some persons also from and projects and especially local authorities from Eastern and Central Europe. And so just to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Masha Tarle. I have been living now in Brussels for about 12 years. I'm Croatian. I work in Climate Alliance, which is a network, a city network with cities from all over Europe that are active in the fight against climate change. And today I am joined by my colleague Mara Oprea, who is giving us support for this webinar and for the events. So you can of course also write to her in the chat if you need anything. I'm of course also joined from our project by our project lead from Padova, Giovanni Vicentini, who is really the go-to person for everything related to one-stop shops. And I'm also joined by our speakers, whom I thank very much that they are here with us today. And so I will come to that in a moment. Just to tell you, please to have always your cameras turned off and yourself muted as well, because this is mainly going to be a webinar where we will hear the experiences of our speakers. They will tell us about their projects. We will also have our keynote, who is going to really present the context so that we know more about one-stop shops and citizen engagement. And this is going to be recorded. After the session, there's going to be a survey sent to you, so we kindly ask you to fill it in. Also, of course, the presentations will be sent to you because we have your emails, you have signed up, so thank you for that. In terms of questions, what we would prefer is that you are active in the chat. And if you could just, even when you're listening to the presentations, you're very free to ask questions in the chat, to answer each other's questions. And if you have a question for a specific speaker, please put it down in the chat, because Mara is going to collect all these questions. So before I give the word to our keynote, who is Christophe Milin, who is working at the European Commission's Executive Agency for Climate Infrastructure. So I will give him the word just in a couple of minutes. But I would like to I'll have a little poll, because I was thinking about this from the point of view of a citizen, right? and I've had these issues as well. I've been thinking for about 10 years to renovate my apartment. It still hasn't happened. So we want to ask you, what is your biggest obstacle to beginning your home renovation journey, if that's something that you're thinking about. So if you could just have a look. I think there's a single choice. I see that we put this as a single choice. And then there's a second question, don't forget, before you click submit, that if you want to renovate your home, what would be your first step in the process? Okay, so when you have submitted the poll, we will see what the results are. So that's just going to be a little beginning to see where we are at. Okay, so we already have some results here. I think you can all see the results. So most of the respondents said that it's about financial barriers followed by lack of technical knowledge and know-how. Yeah, that we all know, right? We need to see today maybe how our projects are engaging citizens on both of these points. And the second one is about, so what would be the first step? And most people said we would call research about public information and resources. So that will also be interesting to see where people go, whether to their municipal authorities or national authorities. Okay, so now that we have a little bit of a kind of warm up, I will pass the floor to our keynote, who will speak for about 15 minutes. And as I said, feel free to have a discussion in the chat. I will also be in the chat. So Christophe Milan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hope you can hear me well. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Christophe Milan. I'm a project advisor at CINEA, at the European Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present today and discuss this topic of one-stop shop. My presentation, I will try to keep it focused so we can have a long discussion afterward. I will not so much focus on the importance of home renovation and not even so much on the importance of one-stop shop. I will rather focus on an analytical framework to distinguish between different models of one-stop shop. The framework we developed in a recent paper we wrote with a colleague of mine, Adrien Bullier, for the ECEEE summer study, and hopefully start a discussion from there. I can hear there are enthusiastic people talking in the background. If you can mute your microphone, that would be very nice for the rest of the audience. So starting with the human factor behind the home renovation, we have big ambition, but in the end, these ambitions rely on the decision from homeowners who are in most cases non-professional individuals, and by this I mean they are not specialized in energy matters and not even in housing management, so we try to push the demand for home renovation in different ways, by incentivizing the demand through subsidies, for instance, or information, or even it is being discussed now the possibility to constrain demand by requiring certain level of performance for selling or renting a home. But in any case, either you incentivize or you constrain, you need also to facilitate this refurbishment and help provide solutions to the homeowners so they can actually go through the process. It's not realistic to expect a household to build capacity on home renovation, especially if we're targeting deep energy retrofits. Most people will likely refurbish one home or maybe two in their life, and it's not realistic to expect them to become a specialist on that matter. Also to emphasize that there is no lack of market participants. It's a market, the construction market is actually well populated with lots of different types of participants. The main problem is the absence of coordination and the diverging interests among the different market players. So we define a number of steps along what we call a customer journey for home renovation, starting from initial stages of information, identifying the possibility of refurbishment and first steps of designs and detailed design, selecting company, finding the financing, developing and contracting with companies so that they actually do the refurbishment, and afterward receive this refurbishment and make sure that the performance is met. There are different types of actors on the market already active, and we tried in the paper I mentioned, and you will get the references afterward, to define to which extent these activities are their core business or more marginal in the activity. But from the homeowner's perspective, the customer journey rather look like something like this. You have to navigate between many different actors in the different steps, and it's actually complex, and you may be lost in the complexity of the whole thing. So the idea of these integrated home renovation services is to start from the homeowner's experience. What is their actual experience when renovating the home? And try to coordinate, combine, integrate the different services that are needed to go through the full process. The main idea is to consider that homeowners will not build capacity, and you should relieve them of some of the tasks for which they are not well equipped. We considered actually this to be very helpful to build trust towards this kind of refurbishment and trigger more action, and in the end indispensable to upscale low energy renovations. So in the paper we wrote for the CEEE summer study, we defined 3 different models. I will try to develop now. An advice model focused more on the upstream part of the journey, information, simplified diagnosis, and so on. A support model that goes beyond simple information and actually provide active support to homeowners, and an implementation model where you not only provide a design and support and information, but also provide actual renovation work. So it's based on observation, and it's kind of easy to distinguish in generic terms. When we will enter more into the details, we'll see that the frontier is much more blurry and to be defined on a case by case. If I focus on the advice model, as I said, it's very much focused on the upstream part of the journey, providing information, reaching also the largest audience. You provide generic information to the largest number of people you can, with the idea to trigger action, but also to raise homeowners' awareness, and in the end also disseminate new social norms. You have also lots of work done in detecting prospective homeowners, and in particular detecting the people that are purchasing their home, because you know that they are already getting financial solutions to buy the home, and they are also more inclined to perform refurbishment, even big refurbishment in their home. So it's particularly crucial that you can detect them and convince them to conduct energy refurbishment in the same process. The diagnoses that are provided at this stage are rather generic, focused on the investment and not so much on the investor. So there's no analysis of the revenues, for instance, of the investor, but it's very much focused on the project. Also, the support provided in contracting with professionals or getting a financial offer is lighter than in the following models. So there's no direct connections, for instance, with construction companies or banks, and it's rather provision of director of company, provision of labor, some trainings, probably certifications, and so on. So it's actually a lot of activities that for which it's difficult to find an economic equilibrium. There are many of these that could be qualified actually as a public service, especially for the first steps of information. And there is a discussion ongoing on whether these type of services should also be developed in the frame of a public service. Going one step further in the approach, and a second model would go beyond the comfort zone of most public actors, because in that case you engage fully in market activity, and therefore you incur professional liabilities for the information and services you are provided. That means that, for instance, you get into the details of the project designs, including, for instance, drafting the specifications for then consulting a construction company. So you incur liabilities for the type of services you provide and the exact designs that you suggest to the homeowners. You can also, in this model, provide support, active support in selecting companies. That means getting in touch with companies and even negotiating prices or having an opinion also of what is or what is not relevant services provided. You can also include in your services the supervision of the work site and the reception of the work, and quality assurance and follow-up after renovation. So it's very much like an architect's mandate, only slightly extended to cover the whole customer journey and focus on energy refurbishment, but it looks very much like an architect activity. And the tipping point between the previous model, the advice model, and the support model could be materialized, for instance, by charging for the services provided, or by the signature of a service contract that defines the exact type of services to be provided and the cost also for these provision. It can also be materialized by more anecdotal aspects, such as physically visiting the home that should be refurbished. What is important to understand is that the tipping point, the exact tipping point between the advice and support model, is not so much for you to define and is open to interpretation. So it's if there was a complaint by a homeowner that is not happy with the work that has been done, he is allowed to file a complaint, and the judge will judge in front of the actual activities and services that were provided and decide whether or not the structure is liable. And he can decide that the structure is liable even if the structure says that it is not. So it's very important to understand that the actual limit is actually quite blurry, and this being said, that can also mean that instead of staying in this kind of blurry zone, you can fully go in the support model and take the insurance and all the securities you need to actually be covered in case of liability, and that's fully okay. One step further and a different model, a third model, let's say, would be the implementation model, where you not only provide the design for the refurbishment to be conducted, but you also implement part of or all of the renovation work. So that's typically where the ESCO model would belong, but other models can also be considered here. That's also where you can more easily provide quality assurance and a guarantee on the actual performance after the work is performed, not necessarily in the form of energy performance contract or savings guarantees, as been discussed many times, but it can be a lighter quality insurance still, and also covering the whole customer journey and not only energy aspect. What is important to understand, and a much clearer tipping point between this implementation model and the previous ones, is that you have a vested interest in the type of work that will be done, because you are providing the work. You are interested in homeowners performing this work with you, and so you have a vested interest, and in a sense the services and the advice you give may be seen as less impartial. On the other hand, because you can generate revenues on the work you perform, you may also be able to provide cheaper services for the design. Around financing, there is actually, we didn't define financing as a separate fourth model, because we consider that it can be an option on top of any of the three previous models, even if concretely it makes more sense on the support or implementation model. just to remind that providing financing is, and even financial services is a regulated activity. So to provide finance, to provide loans, for instance, you need the appropriate legal framework. You cannot just decide that you are a bank. It doesn't work like this. You need an authorization, and probably quite difficult one to get. But there are other type of financial services you can also consider, facilitating access to public grant, pre-financing public grant maybe, or work with a bank to pre-qualify for a bank offer. There are also other financial aspects could be considered, but I will not develop here. Just to mention, we have supported in the past, and we're still supporting with the new Life Clean Energy Transition Program, the development of one-stop shops. But there is actually a call that just concluded this year, and that will probably be reopened next year to support the development of one-stop shops in Europe. We have here a few examples and some of these in the room today presenting after me. And so I will just conclude with an open question I would like to ask you, and maybe we can discuss later in the discussion after the rest of the presentations. But from what you see, what do you think is missing to move from the pilots of one-stop shop to a generalization of this type of approach? What type, for instance, what type of support are you missing to develop your own initiative? And a second question would be, and because we see that many of these initiatives benefit from public support from local actors, mainly from municipalities or from regions, how can we build the capacity of local actors to develop and operate such schemes on a large scale? So what is missing also compared to the traditional skills that local actors may have to be able to develop this kind of approaches? I give you, with the presentation, a few references you can look at, and I conclude here.
That's great. Thank you very much, Christophe. This was really, really interesting and really nice, simple, and easy to go through. So I really appreciate that, because even for those who are maybe not really into, who don't know a lot about the research, don't know about what's going on, this was so clear, because you just gave us so much to think about. Now, the questions that you just asked, maybe if you could, because you do want to address them, but just tell us, who do you think would be the right person to answer this question? Would it be like the people in the audience now who are involved in projects and initiatives with one-stop shops? Would they be the best persons, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that could be, because I guess some of the audience would be in a position to develop a one-stop shops, and maybe they are missing something, or they need some extra support, or maybe the framework is not right, and I would like to get their experience and maybe their feedback on why or why not going in this direction.
I'm sure that there's someone burning to answer. So thank you very much, Christophe. That was really interesting. What really sticks in our mind is, of course, the fact that homeowners do not build capacity. That's really a good point. And then your presentation was really about introducing these 3 types of models. And we will then discuss later, and hopefully our speakers that are going to come now, which is really 3 different EU projects working on one-stop shops, implementing one-stop shops in the ground. So they're going to really tell us, if all of you speakers can also think about the models that Christophe has been talking about and how they apply to your project. So I'm going to give now the floor to our project lead, who is Giovanni Vicentini from Padova. And Giovanni has been working in the municipality of Padova for a very long time. And he is really an expert. He's really, as I said, the go-to person. And he's also our project lead. And he's going to tell us not so much about the project, but really about this topic of citizen engagement and what PadovaFIT is doing to engage. So, Giovanni, the floor is yours.
So thank you so much. I hope you can see the presentation now. Yes?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you very much. And I'm Giovanni Vicentini from the Municipality of Padova. I'm going to present you a little bit our approach in PadovaFIT Expanded concerning the engagement of citizens. But I want to start probably from, just an initial presentation of our situation. So first of all, we are a medium-sized local authority in Italy. And so the one-stop shop we are trying to implement is really focused, has the approach of a local authority. And I think this is really important to start with this specification, because public oaths are really different from the private ones. And we also have a quite particular situation in Italy, since we have this super bonus mechanism, which is quite changed a lot the situation concerning the financing opportunities for the homeowners, but also the relationships between the different actors in the market. So we are now trying to create and implement our one-stop shop in line with the current situation in Italy. And if I have to find out a model which is really tailored to our model in Padova, I think we are providing an advice service to our citizens, but we are in between the advice and support, because in some specific case, as you can see in this presentation, to the motivated homeowners, we are also providing specific information and specific tools, applying some fees, so they pay for having some specific services. But since we are a local authority, we have to start from the right side of this slide. So our main scope is to involve the entire population of the city. So the old families here in Padova, because we have this public role, which is important to us, and we have to increase their awareness about the opportunities, about the importance of refurbishing their homes, and the benefits they can gain from the refurbishment. So we start from a lot of awareness raising policies. We have a lot of communication campaigns in place in Padova to bring the families in this loop, in the loop of refurbishing their homes. Some of them, so more or less the 5%, as far as we understood, are interested in the process. So they can be engaged in the process of the refurbishment, and we provide with those general information. We provide, for example, information material. We provide first information to start the process. And if they are still interested, they move to the targeted information. So we provide, for example, tailored services depending on the real needs, of course, of their buildings, of their socioeconomic situation. In the last case, and here we provide probably, we are more in the support model concerning the different types of models of the OS. We provide specific information. So we provide them, for example, we put them together with a company providing for the refurbishment works. We provide them services concerning the monitoring of the results, and we provide them we match them with the correct financial instrument currently existing in Italy. So we have different types of targets, and 4 targets mainly, and different approach for each of them. But for sure, we have to start from the awareness raising of the entire population and move then to the specific information, just to, as you can see here, not so many families are really interested and motivated, and then concluding the process. In the project, we started from the clustering of our homeowners. Since we have a lot of families here in Padova, we decided to cluster them and to identify more or less 27 different models. So we identified these 3 parameters: the urgency of a renovation of the building, of course, the socioeconomic condition of the family, and here we can see, of course, the part of families in energy poverty condition, which are really important to us because we are a local authority, so they are probably our main target since we are a public authority. And then, of course, the type of building, condominiums and single family houses, we are trying to tackle both, and they have really a different approach to be followed. So we identified 27 different clusters, and for example, the services we are going to provide to energy poverty families living in condominiums and, for example, in buildings with a high urgency of renovation are really different to those provided to high-income families living in single-family houses and probably with a low urgency of renovation. So we have to identify clearly who are our targets and who are going to support as a one-stop shop. With this big awareness-raising campaign, we started also to collect the top user requests with a bottom-up approach. So we understood that the main requests from our citizens, the homeowners, are these three. The procedures, how to do, to start a renovation process, to do things. The contacts, who to call. So I mean the professional, I mean the companies, but also the banks providing for the financial products, and the instruments they can use to reach at the end of the refurbishment process. And on the left side of the slide, you can see the most effective communication channels we are using. That are really important to us because we don't have so much money to spend for this type of activities, and we have to be really aware of the type of channels that are most useful for us and effective in reaching the citizen and in providing them the correct information. And this is more or less our model. So we have this big part, the information services, which are probably the most important to us as municipality. But as Masha told us before, we are a public-private, one-stop shop. So we have also private members providing for the technical and financial services, or supporting the homeowners in finding the technical and the financial services more in line with the needs of the homeowners. So we start from the information services with this different type of targets. We identified the cluster. We try to collect information from the owner and understand their real needs, and we provide them the technical service and the financial services, put them together with the correct stakeholders at the local level. So we are not trying to overlap the existing services provided by the local market. So we are not doing the work of the professional, of the company, or the bank, but we are trying to match the homeowner with the correct service. In some cases, we provide also directly the technical service. For example, we are going to provide energy diagnosis simplified, just to understand which are the type of intervention that building needs. Okay, just a few slides regarding the engagement tools we are putting in place. We put in place in the last months. So we have different, big range of tools, from the online tools to the face-to-face tools. Of course, the COVID-19 situation affected a lot these type of activities. And we started with the website. We moved on with this phone call service for our citizens. So we have here a specific and tailored information provided to the people really interested in the OS process and in specific parts of the OS process. For example, with this instrument, we provide them the list of professionals, the list of companies, and other services, for example. We have a lot of, we are quite active in social media channels, in the newsletter. You can see here also some advertising campaigns on the territory. This is most to engage the most part of our citizens. So here we have the trams, we have the posters in the city, we have advertising campaigns. We are doing twice a year at least, etc. We have also another tool, very important and very specific to our project, probably, this training of the condominium and community facilitators. So some professionals we are selecting in the territory, providing them with new skills. For example, we are providing them communication skills and ability to speak with the homeowners with a simple and clear language, and to provide the homeowner the information in a clear way, because normally we see that professionals here in Padova are not so able and effective in the communication to the homeowner. And this new professional figure, so the community condominium facilitator, can have this role. So to have the professional skills, the technical skills, but also the communication skills. And we have some of them supporting us in the OS activity. So, for example, going to the condominium assemblies. I think this is really an indirect tool to reach citizens, but really effective, because they can really speak with people with clarity and provide them the correct information. So that's all from my side. I just want to answer the first question of Christophe, probably, because we are trying at least to move from the pilots to the generalization and diffusing this role of one-stop shop in Europe, but also in Italy. Europe, because as you heard before, we are trying to have new one-stop shop in place in Romania and Bulgaria, but also in Italy. I think we are trying to create a national advisory board and a national network of one-stop shop, and Silvio and the Europa project is one of the one-stop shop involved in this activity. And I think that this generalization of the one-stop shop could be really effective if you consider two different parameters. The first one is that the one-stop shop can be generalized if the leader of the one-stop shop is the same. So in our case, we can really be effective in generalizing the concept of one-stop shop only to other local authorities and municipalities. We are not able to provide other types of one-stop shop the correct information to set up the one-stop shop itself. So we are trying to create a national network of municipalities active in the one-stop shop. And the other aspects for me, really important is the legal framework and the financial framework. So really state-specific, state member-specific. For example, here in Italy, we have this particular situation, and probably all the municipalities involved in the OS process can have the same goals and the same challenges to be faced. So we can work together and we can support them in activating their one-stop shop with a similar approach than ours. It is more difficult to extend our approach to other countries because when you have different financial opportunities, different legal frameworks, it could be really difficult to have a similar approach followed by other cities. But we're trying to do it, of course, in Bulgaria and Romania, and parts of our work can be really replicated and parts should be adapted to the local context.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. So, well, for Giovanni, I will not really try to summarize what Giovanni said, but what I would like to do, because of course we don't have that much time, but I would like to, what really stuck in my mind here is that for engaging citizens, one of the things that we have done in the PadovaFIT expanded project, and that is maybe a good practice to also export to other projects and other places, is this use of community facilitators. So this use of having people who are trained, who know citizens, who understand their needs, and acting as a bridge between citizens and, of course, the private sector of renovation, and really understanding what are the needs of both. That is really crucial, so that you don't have two sides which are far away from each other, but that you have some people who can actually understand both sides and who can really be reactive in that sense. So this is, I think, something that could be further explored by our audience. Okay, so I'm going to now, so thank you very much, Giovanni. Of course, Giovanni is open to any questions. Please put them in the chat and we're going to look at them all together later. But I'm going to now give the floor to our next speaker, who is whom we already know, an old friend of our PadovaFIT project, Mateus Arinaga. He has already participated in some of our webinars and workshops. So Mateus, thank you very much for being with us again. So Mateus is Flemish, so here in Belgium, and he is working on a project as well on one-stop shops. So he will tell us a little bit about citizen engagement in that framework, but also a little bit about the situation in Flanders. So this is really great because we get to travel today to all these nice places and learn really what are the issues that are affecting and how citizens can be engaged, or what the challenges of engaging citizens in different European countries. So Mateus, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Masha. Happy to be here, of course, as always. So thanks for the introduction. Indeed, my name is Mateus. I work for the Flemish Energy and Climate Agency for the Be Real project. So before I get into the one-stop shops in Flanders, I'll talk about the Be Real project very quickly. So Be Real stands for Belgium Renovates for Energy Efficient Living. It's a life project. And the goal of Be Real is, it's broader than only one-stop shops. We've tried to increase the residential renovation rate in Belgium to ensure that we are in line with the 2050 goals. And we try to do this by turning the regional strategies, so the regional long-term renovation strategies, into practice. So we do this in a number of ways. I'll talk about that on the next slide. But so some numbers about Be Real. It's quite a long project, 7 years. It started in 2018. So we just passed the halfway point, 3 years to go. There's about 50 actions within Be Real, and in total about 14 people working full-time on the project. So those 50 actions I talked about, they can be divided more or less into 5 areas of activity. We develop new policy instruments, digital tools, building passports, things like that. We gather best practices we gather and test best practices, ensure that that information, that knowledge is then put into these innovative business models that can be spread to interested parties. But we also run demonstration projects, so actual projects on the ground where we renovate. We work together with 5 of our partners that are municipalities or cities that do these renovations. We of course build the capacity of the sector, the renovation sector in Belgium, of contractors, of the renovation advisors in the one-stop shops, and so on. And of course we disseminate all our findings and communicate as every project does. So that was very quickly about Be Real, but I'm of course here to talk about one-stop shops today, about the Flemish one-stop shops that are called energy houses, or energiehuizen in Dutch. An energy house, it's a government-run one-stop shop that covers 1 or more municipalities, so you can see them on the map. And yeah, based on the paper of Christophe, it's somewhere, these energy houses are somewhere between the advice and the support model, so somewhere on the blurry line, as he mentioned. So they do all the upstream parts of the customer journey of sharing information, giving advice, things like that. But they're currently upscaling, so they're somewhere in the middle, because they're also, some of them, for example, do on-site energy audits. Some work directly with contractors they outsource, or they don't outsource the problem, but they unburden the citizen, so they don't have to deal with the contractors directly. So that's the situation more or less of the energy houses. They started in 2015 in Flanders as purely as financial institutions that give loans to people. In 2018, these tasks expanded considerably. So they have certain legal tasks that they have to do. So they have a similar legal framework, which is what Giovanni mentioned at the end of his presentation. But this, of course, doesn't mean that they're all the same energy house, the same one-stop shop. They have different funding, they have different partners, they have a different local challenge, a specific local challenge. So there's actually 18 different one-stop shops in Flanders. It's quite a patchwork of different constellations. So the target group, excuse me, as in Giovanni's first slide, where he showed the kind of the customer flow within Padova, a similar situation for Flanders, because everybody is the target group. That's our public role as a government. Excuse me. So everyone is a target group, but of course there are big variations between each energy house. Some can reach more citizens, others can't. But generally speaking, certain segments of the population are insufficiently targeted or reached, namely the landlords, the young people, and especially young couples, the senior citizens that are older than 65, citizens of other nationalities or that speak other languages, and also the group of citizens that's completely uninformed about the whole problem of renovations, that have no idea what's going on. So in the rest of the presentation, I'm going to give you 8 examples. I hope I can stay within time, but apologies if I speak quickly. I'll give you 8 examples of communication actions that some of the energy houses in Flanders have been doing. The first is the search engine and social advertising. So these are, of course, digital ads that we all know. We have 2 examples on the screen here. Digital ads on Google and social media. This was done by the city of Ghent, which is one of the Be Real partners. They ran these ads in the period of September to December last year, and it resulted in a 35% increase in website visits, 40% more requests to book an advice session. And in the end, in those 4 months, 502 advices were booked, which is impressive if you compare it to the total of 2021 of 1,076. So about half the advice sessions were booked within 4 months when those ads were running, so impressive. Some main lessons learned there were to use responsive ads, so ads that automatically change their layout to fill in the available space. That was the first one. The second is then to use content in the ads that is linked to current events, like the high energy prices everywhere in Europe these days. That gets people attentive. The next example is the verhuurderspunt. In Dutch, it literally translates as the landlord advice point. So, I mean, it says it in the name. It's an advice point that is specifically aimed at giving advice and support to landlords and renters in Ghent, the city of Ghent. Typically, that's as I mentioned before, one of the population groups that is not targeted sufficiently. Some of the critical success factors here were to, I mean, it may seem logical, but to ensure a good service. With a good service, I mean, yeah, service that is flexible, that is accessible for everyone, run by competent people, is GDPR compliant, and so on. Because a good service, of course, is its own promotion. Word of mouth spreads, people will hear about it that way. Of course, the IT and digital support is also very important. Having a good customer relationship management system, having a good website, maybe a permanent phone line people can call to, things like that are very important. And then finally, having a communication plan. So every communication action that is done for the landlord advice point has to fit inside a broader story that is then, of course, the communication plan. So those are the critical success factors, but some potential pitfalls that they also identified is the ambition of long-term goals and the expectations that follow after those ambitions are defined. If it's too ambitious, it'll be demotivating and people will not be able to get to their goals. If it's not ambitious enough, then nothing will change. So it's an interesting balance there to strike. The continuity of presence, say that the advice point runs a communication action, they do citizen engagement, people know about it. This is not guaranteed. So this continuity of presence has to be continually kept up to date by organizing other actions or trying to be innovative in the way that you engage citizens. So that's an important possible pitfall. And then, of course, the classical pitfall of the differences between the rights of renters versus landlords. So that's the kind of the split incentive, if you will. The next example is thermography. This is done by the DVV Westhoek, which is one of the energy houses of Flanders. They organized a campaign where they took free thermograms, so thermal images, thermal pictures, to increase awareness of citizens by illustrating the energy loss of their homes. The period for this campaign was in the winter, when of course the energy loss is the highest in Belgium because it's cold. And every month this campaign shifted to another municipality. So practically it was organized. The pictures were taken with, as you can see in the picture, the handheld infrared camera that took the thermal images. But the picture you see on your screen is actually was also turned into banners, 20 banners that were then placed at public communal spots, like at the town hall or at social houses, things like that, to ensure that then people could scan the QR code or type in the link and organize one of these heat scans or thermograms. The next example is Energiek Wonen. So this is the platform that is meant to link the supply, so the contractors on the one hand, to demand, so the citizens. It's a platform that's organized by 2 energy houses and a 3rd organization in the province of Flemish Brabant, which is the province of Flanders around Brussels, directly around Brussels. So how does it work exactly? The citizens, they submit a renovation request form on the platform. Contractors can then, they of course see the form, they can respond with an offer if they would like to do the work that is requested. If both parties then agree, they can sign a contract and they can get started if the renovation works. Of course, not just any contractor can get onto the platform. It has to be a local contractor that is active within the province. But they also have to be competent. So they're selected based on several criteria: the quality of materials that they use, the installation, correct installation, the service that they provide has to be good, the prices they use have to be correct, and they have to guarantee the quality of the works. So that was the platform. Next is the Renovation fan, I've called it here. It's a literal translation from Dutch, small wordplay that doesn't translate, but it's basically a fan-shaped information folder that was targeted at new owners, so people that had just purchased a house in Ghent, once again, city of Ghent. And the goal of the campaign was to give practical renovation tips, so 15 tips in the fan. Give these tips to citizens via the banks and the notaries, who are, of course, the organizations that they have to go to they usually go to when they purchase a house, because they have to get a loan at the banks and they have to get certain documents notarized at the notaries. So this campaign resulted in 2,500 fans, these fans being distributed to 3 banks and 71 notaries. and also the organization of 4 online info sessions for the staff members of the banks and the notaries that were involved. So in the end, these 4 info sessions had about 200 participants in total. The main lessons learned here is that this is actually a massive win-win situation. If more people purchase houses, notaries will be glad because more people, they get more clients, banks will be glad because more people are lending money, so that's definitely a good thing. Generally speaking, the notaries were very enthusiastic from the get-go, from the beginning. And the banks, while it took a bit longer to find the correct person because they're bigger organizations, they were also very enthusiastic once they were contacted. And the campaign, yeah, was successful last year, so it will be expanded and continued this year in 2022. Some negotiations are still ongoing with other banks, so it will be expanded. Next is the measuring tape for new arrivals. So this is a gadget that was distributed. It's a free measuring tape that is also a keychain, and the goal is to stimulate citizens to contact the energy house of the city of Ghent, so that they can get an energy scan or renovation advice session, depending on if they're an owner or a renter. And they can do that because on the gadget, the contact details of the energy house in question are printed. And this gadget is then put within the goodie bag that new arrivals to the city of Ghent get when they move into Ghent from somewhere else or from another place in Ghent. So the results of this campaign were that 7,000 gadgets were distributed to the different people, and there was general positive feedback. Now this is a bit vague, and it ties into the first lesson learned here, that it's actually quite difficult to check the impact of this campaign. So that was the main takeaway. Another important lesson learned is that a good partnership, a smooth partnership with other city services was absolutely vital. Because of course it's not the energy services of the city that can tell when a new person has arrived, has bought a house, or has moved in from a different city. So they had to work together with the population and housing services of Ghent. A third lesson learned here is that useful gadgets such as this one, so gadgets that have some use to a citizen, are actually often more popular than an information folder or a flyer. So maybe a good way to play into that. And then finally, that there has to be a balance, which is a difficult balance to strike, between the price of the gadget, which has to be low enough to be so it's cheap enough, so it doesn't get too expensive, the campaign. So the price on one hand, and then the usefulness of the gadget, that it doesn't just have to be a random gadget that's useless, but it has to have a goal. Then the next example is the Check Your House tool, which is the Check Your House tool, which is a user-friendly and also open source tool that can be used by citizens, by anyone with a link to check how future-proof their house actually is. So it's basically, you can see it on the smartphone in the image here. It's a list of simple questions that they can indicate their answers, and then the results get emailed to the citizens afterwards. And this campaign, ever since last year, June, so 2021, 5,600 sessions on the tool have been completed, so not bad at all. There's questions about solar potential, about the potential for green heat, investment costs, the current energy level of the building, and things like that. The main lessons learned here are that this type of accessible, easy-to-use tool is actually the perfect first step in a customer journey, as it gets people enthusiastic about their homes and the renovation of it. Next, the answers that they were already set. So citizens just had to click yes or no, or had to change a selection to another ready set answer. This made it far easier to fill in the tool, so increased the user friendliness. And then finally, there's actually quite a hard balance to strike here, once again, between the user friendliness on one side, so the simplicity and the efficacy of the tool, versus then the usefulness of the output, that information has to be specific enough and useful enough. Then the last slide here is I will quickly go, I see I'm at my 15 minutes already. The SUPRA project stands for Speed Up Renovation Through Accompaniment. It's an ELENA project in the 3 regions you can see on the map. And the goal of the SUPRA project is to actually upscale renovation advice. So this is maybe an indirect kind of citizen engagement tool or method. but they focus on really getting upscaling renovation advice to realize these deeper renovations in a certain amount of houses. I think 3,000 houses, more or less. And it started in January last year and will run to the end of December of 2023. And yeah, most of the people working on the project are renovation coaches that have a certain skill set to enable proper renovation advice. The lessons learned here are that most of the people that are motivated have actually been convinced already. So the low-hanging fruit has been picked. So now the way to generate leads is with intensive communication and good branding. The renovation coaches I mentioned, their education is the key, because they need both a technical skill set and a social skill set, because they have to inspire trust and competency in the people from the first second that they talk to people. And then finally, that this project, while very good, is actually too small scale and should be on the Flemish or even a national level. So that was it for me. I've talked about the Flemish one-stop shops. There's of course one-stop shops in Brussels and Wallonia as well. The other regions of Belgium, feel free to give them a Google, and I'm sure they'd be happy to present or to talk with you as well.
Thank you.
So thank you for your attention. Any questions afterwards, you can send to my email address, of course, or during the Q&A session later. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Matteo. So this was very useful, very practical, I have to say. It's like a toolbox of ideas that you just offered of how to engage citizens. It's really incredible. I really like the thermography tool.
Yeah, the heat scans, yeah.
It looks amazing. Then all the gadgets, that it is true that the ones that you're using so often, and then they can remind you the fact that you can go and get some advice. The fact that you're really using all the tools of private sector to in people on this customer journey and really to follow through. So I think there's really a lot here to look at. And as I said, we will send you all the presentations, so you will all have more time to really study those in depth if that's something that you would like to use later. But I would just like to say also to Matteos and to the other speakers, I already wrote to them, but also to Silvia, who will speak now, that please feel free to respond to the questions that are already in the chat, so that we can gain some time, because in terms of questions, we always have a lot of questions. I have questions. We have questions that Mara has prepared for today. So if possible, just respond to the questions that are in the chat right now, even when Silvia will be speaking, because it is fine. I think we are at a moment when we can listen and also discuss in a chat with others as well. So that would be great. So thank you, Matteos, very much. And I'm going to go now to our next speaker, who I have to admit we haven't met yet, Silvio. So very nice to meet you. Silvio is also Italian, just like Giovanni. So we have two Italians here. This is not done on purpose, but this is somehow we have Silvio, who is also going to present a European project. But of course, also tell us a bit about his region and what you are doing as well to engage citizens. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Silvio.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation and the nice presentation. Indeed, I'm going to speak about a European project, so I will, let's say, also provide examples very briefly, I would say, from other countries rather than Italy only. Here we go. So the project I'm presenting is called Europa, and it is a project that started last year. So we are at the beginning, let's say, of our implementation. And as you can see on this nice map, we have some pilot partners, regional partners that are implementing the project in Latvia, Germany, France, Italy, and Portugal. And then we have also in the consortium some technical partners that provide their expertise to, let's say, support the implementation at regional level. And our, let's say, main goal on the project is pretty much in line with what we are saying now. So to promote deep renovation of residential building, promoting, let's say, a business model based on an energy efficiency subscription and a one-stop shop approach. So the project mechanism that we are building to accompany homeowners are based on these three let's say, pillars, tools, energy efficiency subscription, one-stop shop, and a replication process. I will speak very briefly about each of the three. So when we speak about energy efficiency subscription, we say that it is, let's say, a set of standards, specifications, and contractual templates that we are providing to homeowners in order to, let's say, build trust on the renovation journey, and also to ensure a kind of standards of quality. And we have also delivered some financial simulation tool in order to check the sustainability of the financial solution that we can propose to them, and also that they can ask us to check. The one-stop shops have been launched very recently in the month of December last year in all the pilot regions, and so we have different cases to show. For example, in Germany, they are facing a challenge based on the specific condition of their market. What they want to do is to promote deep renovation rather than different and fragmented measures that are usually implemented in the residential sector. We have also the one-stop shop from Latvia, which is more, let's say, providing full support in the whole renovation journey of the citizens. Also putting a lot of attention on the financial aspects that they are directly providing. Then we have the case of Piemonte region that where I'm involved, let's say, directly. And for example, we are working at two different ways in terms of depending on the target groups that we are targeting. We are more on the advice services, let's say, for citizens and so for homeowners, but we are trying to provide technical assistance and project development assistance for social housing companies. So we are trying to focus our efforts with social housing companies, try to support bigger investment that they can more easily reach, let's say. Then we have also the Portuguese case and French. I think I don't have too much time to go into detail of each of them, but what I want to leave you as a message that I support what other speakers already said, that there are regional, national, let's say, or regional specificities that we have to take into account when we speak about one-stop shops. And of course, also it depends a lot on who is running these activities. So we have different approaches in the project according to different conditions. So the institutional role of the leader, let's say, of the one-stop shop. We have also to take into consideration the territorial dimension, which is really important when you build up the concept of the one-stop shop. I mean, you can do it for municipalities or large region, and the approach should be rather different, of course. And then there is other aspects already touched upon from other speakers. I mean, the level of maturity of the market, as Giovanni already said. In Italy, we are facing an over-demanding time due to strong incentives. So I think the role that we can play in this game is different if the market is over-demanding rather than if the market has to be pushed. And so on, as the other bullet points mentioned here. So we are providing, for sure, a set of services that we can say information, recommendations, matchmaking with market operators, for example. Also some kind of financial assessment. As I told you, we developed also some simulation tools to support the one-stop shops in doing this job with citizens, with the clients they receive, and a set of contractor specifications that we want to be implemented in the works. So even for us, I mean, we are in the middle between this advice and support model, and in some cases, I mean, for Latvia, maybe they can also be even a bit further. But it depends, I think, from also on the type of customers. I mean that we are working with. I mean for us, for Piemonte, as I said, for social house company, we signed some agreements with them, and we want to support them much more than we do with private citizens, let's say. For the engagement, I mean, we launched the one-stop shops only a few weeks ago. I mean, in all the regions involved. So we started with communication campaign to let the citizen know the existence of this, and we focus so far mainly on this point. But we have on the plan to organize meetings with associations of condominium and other key stakeholders to present the services that we can provide to them, and also to understand how we can support them in a better way from time to time. And I have to say that as a region here in Piemonte, what we are doing is establishing strong collaborations with networks, networks of market operators, of professionals, of lawyers, for example, and we want to build a place where all the informations that are provided by those categories can be found in an easier way. So it's very important that we establish these connections, and this work is very promising. I mean. So I come to the end of my presentation with the last, let's say, information I want to provide. This is important for me. We have just opened a call for replication of our project. As you said, as I said, we have different cases to present, and we are looking for organizations across Europe that are willing to work with us, to share their own experience, to learn from us, or just to build together a better, let's say, service for this tough task that we have in front. So any organization that is willing to or interested to understand more about our project is welcome for this replication process, and all the information can be found on our website. We have a deadline in front of us, which is 21st of February for the applications, and I hope some of the participants here might be interested. So that's all from my side, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Silvio. Thank you very much for this. So you have told us about the Europa project, but also about what you are doing now in Piemonte region and how you're engaging citizens, or at least how you're starting on this journey. I would like to actually open the floor to the question. I would first want to ask you a question, so that since you are now here, that we still stay with you. So I would like to know, what would it be easy for Piemonte to replicate, to copy in a way, what is working in terms of engaging citizens in Padova? That's on one. So that's a one question. And another question, because you are in a European project, is how easy is to replicate a model of engaging citizens from one country to another country? So if you can tell me first at the national level, going from, one region to another, for example, in Italy, in terms of engaging citizens, is that copyable? Is it possible to replicate? And how does that work on an EU level, in your view, Silvio?
Yeah, very shortly. Of course, we know very well PadovaFIT project, and we are directly in contact with Giovanni. He was already attending some, let's say, mutual learning activities that we are organizing in the project. I mean, we had a preparation phase where we, as a consortium, we discussed the issue, and we invited Giovanni and other experts to share their own experience, which is super useful and essential. And we already, I mean, implemented some tools at regional level based on the tips, let's say, or what we got from the experience of PadovaFIT. The will to engage all the associations, let's say, market operator or banks. We already had a look to the let's say, deliverables or the approach that has been followed in PadovaFIT, and we tried to replicate a little bit or to adapt to our context, let's say, what has been done over there. In terms of engagement, I mean, it is the same. We can get a lot of inspiration, and we can for sure copy some approaches. As I said in my presentation, I mean, we have also to take into consideration the territorial dimension. We are a region. We are quite big with a lot of municipalities. So the role that we can play at regional level is different than a city, as a city is Padova. Okay, taking into account all the differences, I think there is a lot to learn, to share, and that's why we count also on this replication process to bring our experience to other organizations, but also taking really in mind that we can get a lot from others, because we want to work with organizations that are planning or that are running a similar project. And so for sure this is something that we count on also to improve ourselves. Maybe this also brings me to the answer of the second part of your question. I mean, it is very important. I also European Commission said, I think they launched this call for one-stop shop with project-based. They want to finance regional project. I mean, because the regional context is really peculiar and important to take into account. But of course, then there is a lot of space to share information, to learn from each other, and to pick something that you can adapt to your context. And I truly believe this is a key point.
Thank you very much, Silvio. I'm going to also encourage you, of course, to post any other questions in the chat. Please know that, so I'm asking also the speakers, if you see a question in the chat, please answer it in the chat. But I'm also going to be at the same, we need to do a little bit of multitasking here, because I will also be asking you questions. So I want to actually ask a kind of big picture question, and maybe to Christoph, if Christoph, you are here, let me just put you here. Yeah, great. So, Christoph, I want to ask you if there's been any data, any studies, any research about really this topic of participation of citizens in the renovation of their homes, and any data that could be relevant for today. And if you don't have any data specific now on hold, that's okay as well. But is it a satisfactory rate, or I mean, we probably know it's not, but what do we know about generally in Europe, the engagement rate, the participation rate of citizens in renovation?
That's a difficult question, actually. The variety of approaches make it first very difficult to compare from one place to the other. And the type of services provided makes it even more difficult. But we do have some information, at least from France, and I see Marie Bourgeot is here from the PadovaFIT Project. Maybe she can complete or react to what I'm saying. We have a number of initiatives in France to propose a full package of services with support or implementation models, and they are working on the full journey. to establish their model, working also on drop-up rate of at each step of the journey, which is actually quite crucial when you try to define your business model and your equilibrium. If you lose most of your prospects at the very early stages, then you're spending lots of time for projects that do not materialize in the end, and maybe you're not able to charge for them, and therefore your equilibrium is not there. So there is clearly a line to draw. There is even the possibility, if you really develop this as a business approach, to focus on and to have methods where you focus on the prospects that are more likely to follow through the full journey, and very quickly screen out the ones that you see are going nowhere, which should be addressed at some point, but you cannot address with your initiative. But yeah, in terms of hard data and figures, I cannot provide it.
Yeah, but that could be quite interesting, right? To have, I mean, maybe I know there was a joint research center, a very extensive report research done on one-stop shops. And maybe it's quite a long one, so I would have to have a look, but maybe there are some figures there. I don't now exactly know the title of this research, but it was very thorough. And I think that could be interesting to see, right? What are the statistics in terms of the engagement, the participation, and maybe there was a poll or something as well, so that we could have some good data on hand.
Indeed, I mean, the problem and what we modestly try to do with the paper is to have some kind of analytical framework also to compare the different initiatives, defining in generic terms the different steps and different models, so we can also then compare different experiences and try to compare data from one to the other. Because in the end, when you enter into the details, it's always particular to a case, even to a project. Absolutely. So yeah, it's quite difficult to compare. Yeah.
Absolutely. And good that you just say that's particular. So I would actually like to ask Giovanni from the PadovaFIT Expanded project. Giovanni, in your view, what is really the biggest challenge to engaging citizens in renovation? And I would ask you to respond in one hand in Padova, and on the other hand in Italy. Maybe the response is the same for both, or maybe it's different. So if you could tell us, please, what is the biggest challenge to really engaging citizens in your country and in your city?
Yeah, probably the biggest challenge could change over time, because now, since we have this super bonus mechanism, the biggest challenge is to really bring people to understand the complexity of the process, because normally they think that everything is provided by the government, since they have this 110% of fiscal rebate, and they think this is easy to go on with the process. On the contrary, the process is quite complicated, because they should have they should contact and be in touch with a lot of different players. And this is our role as a one-stop shop to make one unique proposal to them. So having all the players already behind, organized and collaborating, and putting the demand together with a coordinated supply. But before the super bonus, and I noticed that one question is related to the super bonus initiative, as we mentioned a lot of times today, and probably after also Silvio can provide some information about that. And before the super bonus, the challenges were different, and probably after the super bonus, because in 2 years it will end this initiative. We will have still different problems, different challenges, and this is why our one-stop shop should be really flexible over time. Now we have a particular scheme adapted to the local context. In the future, or before, but particularly in the future, since we have a long-term perspective, we should adapt to the things changing, the legal framework changing, the financial opportunities changing, and understand the new challenges of the homeowners. So the question is difficult because over time, the answer is different.
I understand. And it's interesting because, so one of the things that is engaging the citizens in Italy is this super bonus, which you can explain maybe in the chat later to those who haven't heard about it, but it's essentially a fiscal, what is it called? A fiscal rebate.
Up to the 110% of the costs occurred for the renovation. So Big.
Exactly. So a wonderful
Big
way to engage engage citizens. However, as we know also, this can disrupt the market, and this can definitely affect the engagement, because then what happens when it's not valid anymore, right? So this is a very specific thing to Italy, but it's a good lesson to be learned. We're going to see what's going to happen as well after, with engagement 2 years later, right? But then in other countries, we have other ways to engage citizens. So I would like to now maybe pass and ask Mateus, if you can maybe tell us about, so the question that I have for you has to do with the fact that you are engaging citizens not with a super bonus, because you don't have that we don't have that in Belgium. We do have some other things actually that I've heard about that are quite interesting and that are definitely engaging citizens, because there is a way to get some funding from the government, from the local government, and that's kind of new. So that's true that's working. But what I've liked from your approach, Mateus, is that you are taking a very market kind of approach, in the sense that you're really using this segmentation, targeting of, who the audience is, and you're not just talking about citizens, you're talking about young couples, the elderly, people in specific times of their life, in specific income brackets. You're even dividing, like you're even targeting the homeowners or the landlords. So you're really using this in a very commercial way. And what I would like to know is there follow-up? So my question is, when you manage to engage someone in that first moment, so almost like when I'm, on Google and I'm looking for, I don't know, buying a new coat, and then, for like 6 months, the only thing I have on my screen is always like whoever, Facebook or whatever is just telling me about coats. So, I'm engaged, right? I cannot escape from the fact that once I was interested in something, it's going to continuously want to sell me that. And this is the way it's working today. But how do you do follow-up so that you don't stay at that advice model, but that you really actually get the citizens engaged and that they stay on that journey? Because I have an experience that I started in Belgium on the journey. We got some advice from Brussels, and that was it. They actually sent us a file that I never, have to admit, I didn't really read very well. And, that was it. It was like I engaged, it stopped, and there was no follow-up.
Yeah, so theoretically, one of the legal tasks of the energy houses in Flanders is to do follow-up, to ensure that they guide the citizen along their entire renovation journey, that they're the single point of contact for the citizen with all their questions. Theoretically, of course, it's different than in practice. In practice, it's similar, I think, that they can't do follow-up. Not that they don't want to, but they simply can't, due to a number of reasons. But the big one, and this kind of answers your questions to Giovanni and to Christophe as well. The biggest problem is actually lack of personnel. So the reason that the communication, you might have realized that all the examples I gave were almost all from Ghent, which is our poster boy, poster energy house. They do it very well, the communication, but all the rest, not all the rest, they communicate as well, but they have big problems because they don't have enough people to do the follow-up, as you say, and all the other tasks. So the biggest problem then, and this answers your question to Giovanni, is that it's actually lack of personnel, and so funding actually. So the big solution to increase communication would be to fund the energy houses better. It's maybe not a very nice answer, but it's also not very attractive, but that would be the best way. Maybe I can quickly share my screen, like 1 minute or 30 seconds. Yeah. Because I ran a oh, now I have all my links open. There you go. So I ran a survey last year, and one of the questions was, can you sufficiently communicate to attract new client segments? Because the energy houses are trying to scale up. And the dark blue is yes, and all the rest is either sometimes or no. And so one of the answers is even that they're actively not communicating because they have no time and no people. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so Yeah, it definitely has a lot to do with personnel, right? Because of course, my comparison was not the right one in the sense that I was talking about a product like as a coat or something, which there's plenty of companies that are offering this product who can have a lot of employees who can, of course, do a lot of marketing and not only employees, but of course, Google advertising and all those things, which do cost a lot of money, right? And often when it comes to home renovation and one-stop shops and engaging citizens, we don't have those resources. So that's definitely an issue. Okay, so thank you very much, Mateus. And I would just like to maybe finish by going back to the beginning with Christoph, because Christoph, you are, let me just put you in the spotlight. So you are, Christoph, also speaking from the point of view of policy, because this is the kind of work you do. And just wondering, so your executive agency is highlighting a lot these one-stop shops. And of course, in policy, in the directives, we can see that one-stop shops are mentioned. So they are seen as this tool to put integrated home renovation services out there. Can you tell us, maybe look a little bit into the future, and what do you think is going to happen? Because now we have the situation where we do have existing one-stop shops. We do have a lot of projects, EU-funded projects that are working on this with their own pilots. And, you know, some of them better, some of them worse. So, of course, there's really a big difference. But, you know, something is happening. What do you think, how long will it take until this is actually going to be a new model, a working model, and it's going to start showing some fruits, so that it's going to, that the one-stop shop is going to start engaging citizens, and that home renovations are going to start happening, and that because without that, we just cannot reach our targets, right, that we set ourselves for the building sector. So what do you think, like from the situation now until that ideal, what needs to still happen?
And a lot still to need to happen, and rather quickly than later, because we do have targets, climate neutrality by 2050. We also have target of halving greenhouse gases emission within the next 8 years, which we shouldn't forget. It's actually a very huge target, and there should be a lot going on, especially on the housing sector. I tend to try to remain optimistic, and probably there is some kind of small snowball effect to get once the first experiences and maybe your webinar and other similar activities contribute to this, also to try to gain some traction and to make people copy the front runners and have more experiences. But clearly, we are not at scale. Huh? There's clearly not enough of these initiatives, and the support we can be providing from here, from Brussels, it's extremely limited, especially in the frame of the live program. We can follow a number of a few tens of initiatives. We should need thousands of initiatives. So that would, but I mean, sharing this knowledge and also maybe more modestly also trying to clarify exactly what we are looking at and what we want to achieve is also good. I hope that modestly that the paper we wrote can contribute to this debate. I hope this conference also try to clarify what the one-stop shop means. If you just say one-stop shop, and this is for the time being what is presented in legislation, you haven't said much. Huh? As we've seen, there's much more behind the generic terms. So I think we can now move towards a more precise definition of what is a one-stop shop and what we are looking for in terms of effect. And what is, I think, the most important point is the question of resources and the fact that these take time. You need to dedicate the time. You need to spend time with the homeowners. And you cannot avoid this. There's not so many economies of scale. You need to spend the time. And so you need the resources. Either you're able to charge the homeowner and lucky you, because it's still very immature, and normally the willingness to pay is quite low, or you support these initiatives. And there is an opportunity now with the recovery funds, for instance, to use the money and not providing direct subsidies to investment, which can be helpful, but doesn't have the same leverage effect that providing support to this kind of support structures that would trigger more investment. We need to look for the highest leverage possible and allocate the resources for that effect.
Thank you very much for this very clear answer, a very cautious answer, right? It does definitely take time. It's not something that just happens. But with that, we're going to close this session today. And I want to tell you that next time we are going to have next time we're going to talk about business models actually related to one-stop shops. So please stay tuned. So it's going to be all about business models in February. We will tell you the exact date. We might combine it actually with another conference of one of other European projects on one-stop shops. And then a third webinar is going to come up in March talking about finances. So you can also stay tuned to that, which is, of course, what also Christoph now mentioned a lot. So what I want to do is I want to really thank all the speakers today for their very interesting presentations. Also thank, of course, all the participants. I think that you have been very active. You have asked a lot of questions. And if you did not receive an answer to your question, please feel free to reach out to the speakers. So you can, of course, either if there's an email there, you can email them. If not, you can add them on LinkedIn. I would like us to become a network of all of us to continue together in this network of persons interested in one-stop shops and who are really motivated to make this happen. Thank you very much once again, and please remember to fill in the survey that we're going to send you. We're going to be sending it today, and we will also send you either today or tomorrow the presentations. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Masha, for the wonderful coordination.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Well.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
Bye. Bye. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Silvio. Thanks, Giovanni. Thank Mateus.
Thank you, everything. Everybody, hello, bye.
Thank you, Ella, for participating.